day, Africa, and welcome to AAU Talks here on AAU TV. And today on AAU Talks, we'll be discussing higher education space in Ethiopia. You can join the conversation via our social media platforms, Association of African Universities on Facebook, and AAU_67 and via Twitter. My name is Kwesi Sam. I'll go for a short break, and when I return, I will introduce my guest. Stay tuned.
My name is Julius Peter Tib. I'm pursuing Diploma in Information and Communication Technology at University of Dodoma, College of Informatics and Virtual Education. My course is all about information and communication technology. It's based on how to pass the information and how people can get that information. There are so many, but actually the basic are like system developers, computer networking and analyst, and system analyst in general. College informatics are very good compared to other places. We have a very nice library, so as a student can be very comfortably to study. We have internet access, so if you feel like you need more information, you can access through it online. We have a very nice classes compared to other places, so a student can be comfortably and like to be in class most of the time. We have extra classes for studying, personally studying. We have very nice cafeteria and so many. If someone needs to goes up with the technology, compares now this day technology are very fast, I advise them to join SIVE. I mean College Information and Virtual Education. This is a very nice place for someone who wants to be a very professional IT. You can be able to know many things about computers and information at all.
Welcome back from that short break. This is AAU Talks here on AAU TV. My name is Kwesi Sam. And before we left for the break, I just told you what we'll be discussing today. And we are looking at the higher education space in Ethiopia. We have in the studio two distinguished academics from the Ethiopian Institute of Higher Education. And they are going to help us all to discuss the issues concerning Ethiopian higher education. The first guest to be introduced is Dr. Abebaw Yirga Adamu, and he is the director at the Ethiopian Institute of Higher Education. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Great. And the second guest to be introduced is the managing director of the Ethiopian Institute of Higher Education, and he is also in a person of Leon Cremonini. I hope I got the name right.
Perfect. Thank
Great.
you.
You are welcome to Ghana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, how has your stay in Ghana been for the past few days?
It's great, and for me it was not the first time. I have been here on Association of African Universities
Staff Exchange,
program,
sure.
And I was at the University of Professional Studies of Accra some 2 years ago.
Great. But for Prof, I know it's your first time.
It is my first time. I found it very interesting, and it was very interesting to visit also the Association of African Universities, and thank you for hosting us.
Great. So before we start the entire discussion, we want to know a bit about you first, and then we'll go to the managing director. We want to know a bit about your background, and then your area of expertise as well for the entire continent.
Yeah, okay. Currently I'm working as the director for Ethiopian Institute of Higher Education.
Okay.
And I'm also an assistant professor in Addis Ababa University. Regarding my educational background, my specialization is on multicultural education. My first master's in Ethiopia was on that. And I had also masters from the University of Aarhus, University of London, and University of one from Spain, lifelong learning policy and management. And I did my PhD in Finland on higher education.
Oh, so you are a global academic.
Yes,
You've been to
I was
every
on Erasmus Mundus
scholarship. That's beautiful. And after that, you decided to come back to Africa.
After all this, I've been 6 years in Europe, and then I decided to come back home.
All right. Good. It's good to be back home, and I think we are proud of you. A lot of your colleagues go, and then at the end of the day, they don't want to come back.
There are some, yes.
Yeah, so you're an example to all of us.
Yeah.
Great. Let me go to Cremonini to tell us a bit about himself also.
Thank you. I work as the managing director for the Ethiopian Institute for Higher Education since March. So I'm quite new to Ethiopia as well, although I've worked in the past on projects in Ethiopia. Prior to this, I used to work in the Netherlands at a Center for Higher Education Policy Studies within the University of Twente, which is a Dutch university. As you can hear from my name, I am Italian, so actually I graduated in Italy at the University of Bologna, which is quite known to be, or at least we claim it is the first university. There are debates about that. But and I originally graduated in international political sciences. Within the higher education field, I have been working for about 12 years in higher education specifically, and I look particularly at internationalization, issues about quality assurance, and also equity and access for minority groups in Europe, and generally now with the issue of refugees in Europe, that's another issue that is very important in Europe. So that's a bit my background, and I'm very excited to have started just a few months ago in Ethiopia, a new adventure.
That's great. So why Ethiopia? I'm very much interested in knowing why Ethiopia for you.
Well, the real background is that I've been working with Ethiopia for a number of years. So my very first time in Ethiopia was in 2009, when I worked with Addis Ababa University, and of late I've been involved in designing the strategy for higher education for Ethiopia, and I've also been involved in the, as we will, I'm sure, talk about soon, in the establishment of the new institute with my esteemed colleagues next to me. So I've got let's say a soft spot for Ethiopia, and I have some knowledge of Ethiopia, so I thought it would be a good opportunity.
Okay, that's brilliant. So let's really go into the institute first, because we'll be looking at the entire education space in Ethiopia. But why is it so necessary at a point like this to have an institute just for higher education in Ethiopia?
I think the institute had been established mainly with the mandate of building the capacity of the Ethiopian higher education leadership and management. Because it has been found one of the many challenges that the Ethiopian higher education sector has faced was leadership and management. You know, any of the academics, when they come to university, they are not going to be hired as president, vice president, or dean. You know, we all have our own specialization, like chemistry, physics, biology.
Your subject matter.
Exactly. So we need to have some kind of professional training which makes us lead a certain organization based on knowledge, skill, and wisdom, and it's such kind of institution which can provide such professional training.
Great. So for how long has this institute been in existence?
The institute was established in 2017, so it's just over a year, before I arrived. I am very proud to say that we had our official inauguration just last Friday. So, and we started operations already a year ago, but we did our first leadership and management training, which is one of our core mandates, and we'll talk about that. We did our first one last week, the first seminar. So I would say that now we are really getting down to brass tacks, and we are really being active. So it's about a year old, but the real activities have started possibly in the last few months in terms of training, and
So what is the vision and mission for the institute?
So we want to contribute to the implementation of higher education policies for the whole country, nationally, and that is like the core mission. And our vision is to be recognized as a national center for training in leadership and management by 2022. So we've got some kind of ambitious targets. And we have a set of core values that we put at the heart of our mission and vision. I don't know if Dr. Abebaw wants to expound on that.
We have some 5 basic strategic themes which we have set for ourselves we need to achieve in the coming 3 years at least. So one of the core activities that we have to engage in is the Ethiopian higher education training program, which have also 2 sub-themes. What we call it ETHAL, the Ethiopian Higher Education Leadership and Management Program. And the other one is need-based training program, where we can customize based on the need of our higher education regulatory bodies or the higher education institutions. We also have what we call it HEPA, the Higher Education Policy Advice.
Okay.
We want to advise the whole higher education sector based on evidence-based researches. And we also want to have the Higher Education Learning Club, which is a platform where we can discuss on most important higher education issues by having scholars on some of the kind of expertise, and it should be on rotational basis where every education institution would have an opportunity to host. And we would also like to have this collaboration and support, because we thought that we cannot address the leadership and management issues by having only one institute. So this kind of activities have to be also delivered at cluster and even at institution level. And when you do all this, you need to also capacitate yourself. So we have also a vision of building the institutional capacity of our own institution. So we will be abide on this by these 5 strategic themes of the institute.
Okay. So this institute is hosted by the University of Addis Ababa, right?
Yes, that's correct.
But it's not for the university, but the entire country.
No. This is an interesting question, which we had last week in our inaugural conference, and we have to make this one clear as well.
Okay.
The initiation came from the Ministry of Education of Ethiopia.
All right.
And we are now getting financial support from the German Ministry of Finance and Development Cooperation. And they are implementing it through the GIZ Ethiopia, Sustainable Education and Training Program. So the initiation came from the Ministry of Education, and Addis Ababa University is hosting the institute. So the institute is geographically located at Addis Ababa University, but it is the ownership goes to all public and private universities in Ethiopia, the higher education regulatory bodies. So it's not AU's only AU's property. Yes, it serves the national interest.
So but why your university?
I think if I could just add on what was just being said, a very important point about what Dr. Abebaw was saying is the issue of legitimacy. So because it serves the whole country and we want to serve the whole system, I mean, there's an issue of legitimacy. It gives legitimacy, and we are trying to explain this very clearly and disseminate this idea very clearly across the system. I think, I mean, in terms of why our university, maybe Dr. Abebaw will add on to what I say, but I think there are practical considerations that helped a lot. So Addis Ababa University is, whether we, Addis Ababa is the first university in the country. It has got better infrastructure than many universities, and so that was a plus point, I think, for us. So we are easily reachable through Addis Ababa University. And this center should be located, could be an independent center, that's another debate, but that would bring a whole other, let's say, range of political issues to establish it. So that was, I think, really a practical reason as well.
Okay. But I'm sure the initiative came from Addis Ababa University.
No.
Directly from the Ministry of Education.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So there was a call that was issued, and then
so it shows, even the initiation shows that it's not an institutional initiative. It's not an institutional interest. It's rather a national interest and a national initiative.
Okay, great. Let's go a bit deeper. You know, there is an adage that says that the chick that is closer to the hen or the mom always has the best part of the booty. And so we having the African Union Commission in Ethiopia, definitely it is hypothesized that the higher education space in Ethiopia may be enjoying much more better than the others. How is this assertion?
I like the proverb you use very much. But when it comes to the African Union Commission, hosting the African Union Commission in Ethiopia, in Addis, was, I would say, it's a national pride, and it might have some political and economic advantage.
Sure.
But I can definitely say that the Ethiopian higher education has not been benefiting anything by only having the African Union Commission in Addis. And there are so many university lecturers and staff who doesn't know even the existence of African Union Commission and what
In Ethiopia.
in Ethiopia, and the
That's
relation
amazing.
sometimes maybe what kind of relationship does we have with the African Union Commission, because when we say African Union Commission, the first thing that comes is political or development issues,
Okay.
not higher education.
Education issues, okay.
There might be some people who knows that the African Union Commission have also its own education and higher education department, but I can assure you that we haven't benefited by hosting the African Union Commission or the Department for Higher Education. We are acting like
That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you add anything to it?
I would agree completely with what was just said by Dr. Abebaw. I think one of the things that also should be said is that Ethiopia is not Addis Ababa, and there are very, like many other countries, I presume, but there are very great regional disparities. And we've had in Ethiopia a huge increase in the number of universities over the years. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a moment, but that led to now we are the fourth generation of universities. Dr. Abebaw was mentioning just a moment ago about the training at cluster level. So Ethiopia is divided in a number of clusters from the higher education point of view. And there are different problems that emerge. So regional universities have got far more problems than universities that are in Addis Ababa, sorry.
Okay.
And so might be less aware, of what is really happening down there in Addis Ababa. So I think it's good always to remember that all the institutions we have in the center, in the capital, do not per se benefit directly
from there. But is it not because of the fact that maybe the academics or the higher education institutions may not have capitalized on the presence of the African Union Commission in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa?
It might be, but I'm not even sure that if we want to capitalize on what resource we have, geographical location, we need to ask first that does the African Union Commission even favor some of the Ethiopian higher education institutions because it is there.
So its presence. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think that even they would have this kind of strategies where they would have given an advantage to the region or country where the commission have been geographically located. But it's really good because whenever we have something, at least we can benefit because we are not supposed to travel or go somewhere because it's there. So we can have geographical advantage, but I don't think when it comes to resource or expertise and knowledge, we don't benefit anything from the presence of the African Union Commission.
But they have a lot of grants, scholarships. They have the Education Commission, which gives a lot of grants, scholarships, and other opportunities for students. So, but I believe they have these volunteering programs for the students on the continent. Some from the south. They go to other countries and everything, and I believe that universities in Ethiopia may be benefiting from this package.
I would say that many of the Ethiopian universities and their students are very active when it comes to Erasmus Mundus scholarship, but we have not utilized very much the opportunities that we get at regional and continental level. And I would say that we are at least weak when it comes to getting the tips or some information what the African Union Commission provides through different scholarship. Like I know personally that there are so many scholarship, but I didn't see our universities are capitalizing on that.
Great. I think we'll go deeper into that, but let me get to you. What you have been working in Italy for some time, and then until recently you came to Ethiopia, even though you have been with them from 2009. What would be your basic assessment of higher education in Ethiopia?
You mean in terms of quality or
in terms of quality, in terms of affordability, in terms of accessibility and everything? Yeah,
so I think one of the things, as I just mentioned, Ethiopia has got a huge potential. That's the first thing, and it has got a huge demand. And one of the interesting things in Ethiopia, compared to most high-income countries, so to say, is, for example, that the government spends more than the average high-income country on education overall. According to the last data that I have, it was like almost 5% of GDP, 4.5 or 4.6% of GDP, which is far higher. But a key problem that is evident in Ethiopia is that most of this money is used for the current expenditures. It's not used to build capacity or sustainable capacity. And
basically goes into salaries and
yes,
everything of academics. Okay.
Exactly. And that is, I think, one of the key problems and one of the reasons also why I think it's crucial that we established, that this institute where I work has been established, because our goal is to build sustainable capacity. It's not to give, one workshop and then that's it. And so that is one thing. On the other hand, another interesting point in Ethiopia, but it's not unique to Ethiopia, as you surely know, is that there is an age window of opportunity if it's well used. We've got a huge number of youth in Ethiopia compared, for example, to Europe, which in Europe we are aging. But that means, on the other hand, a huge demand for higher education. And that has led to the establishment of we are currently at 46 public universities, 4 private full-fledged universities, and I think over 150 private colleges, not full-fledged universities. And that means then that we have all issues about quality. How do you ensure the quality of all these new providers that have grown in a very short time? That's a huge increase.
Exactly. Because I remember in the 90s, we used to only have one university. No, in the 50s, right? And then in the 90s, it became 2. So it means that right from the 2000 to 2018, we have almost close to 196 universities. I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the higher education development in Ethiopia, you are right that the first university college, which is the now Addis Ababa University, was established in 1950.
Sure.
And then we had the second university, and you know that Asmara University used to be part of the Ethiopian higher education institution. So if we count that one, it used to be 3, but now officially we can say that we used to have 2, Addis Ababa University and Haramaya University. And then in 2000, I think at the end of 1990s, we have upgraded or
expanded.
And then we had also some new, and it becomes 10 universities, and within a decade we ended up having 21 universities and so on, and now we have 46 public universities under the supervision of the Ministry of Education. And as Leon was mentioning, that we have 4 full-fledged private universities and over 170 colleges and university colleges of private higher education.
Wow, that's interesting. But in terms of quality assurance, it's very important, and there is an increasing or growing demand for higher education across all the countries in Africa. One key thing that we must ensure is quality, in as much as the institutions are springing up. Who is supposed to ensure that they pay attention to the quality in terms of teaching and learning in Ethiopia?
I think I'll pass this to Abebaw, who works for as well.
Officially, we had an agency established to ensure quality, and it's the Higher Education Relevance and Quality Agency. It has autonomy and authority to look after the quality and relevance of all academic programs in public and private universities. But when it comes to quality, I would say that quality is one of the most challenges that the Ethiopian higher education are facing nowadays. And it's a big challenge, and it's something which all the higher education communities are agreeing on. The higher education regulatory bodies, the higher education institutions, parents, students, we all agree that quality is one of the most challenges that we need to address. And we have all the, I would say that policy is not a problem. We have all the policies, we have the agencies, but we don't have the determination and the action on ground to address
to implement those policies that you have.
Yes, and I would boldly also say that the Higher Education Relevance and Quality Agency have no as such power when it comes to public universities, because public universities, they can open, close, whatever program they want, because they have the right to do that according to the 2009 Ethiopian Higher Education Proclamation. So they have, or this agency have a few things to say
Okay.
when it comes to public universities, but they have, I mean, the authority
Mhm.
to say that you cannot open or you can open when it comes to private university.
Okay.
So it's more of a controlling agency rather
Agencies.
than an agency which strives to enhance quality in higher education, particularly when it comes to the public
Okay.
universities in Ethiopia.
All right. Let me come to you, Leon. If we are looking at the setup of universities, every university is set up to make sure that it responds directly to the needs of society, to the needs of the people. Is that the case in Ethiopia? Do you find the universities coming up, the programs they run, are they responding to the basic needs of the Ethiopian government and the people of Ethiopia?
Yes. Thanks for this question, because it's very salient for the
Mm.
Ethiopian case, and I'm sure that again Dr. Abebaw will give his additions to that. But
okay.
one of the key issues that we found in you know, I was mentioning before that I was involved in the strategy development for the higher education
Mhm.
in Ethiopia. And one of the key issues is limited diversification of program
Mhm.
offerings. So I would say that Ethiopia is still quite weak in that, because there is a set kind of offering that basically all universities will give, which is very inefficient. And that is something that is being discussed that has to be reformed. So I think that is one of the key problems in Ethiopia.
Okay.
You know, you could go to a university somewhere in a region, I can't think now of an example, but you would have similar programs to another university that's very nearby, and there's a duplication. And that is a key problem, I think, that should be addressed. So that's also one of the, but again, coming back to our institute, I beg your pardon, this is an issue of strategic choices as well. So that's why it's so important that we have an institute that wants to develop capacity in leadership and management and strategy development, because that comes up to the leaders at the end of the day to be able to change that. I think that's just really important to say. I don't know if you want to.
So that we'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at what your institute will do to address this issue.
Okay.
All right. Viewers, you are still watching AAU Talks here on AAU TV. My name is Kwesi Sam, and we are today looking at the higher education space in Ethiopia. We'll go for a quick break, and when we return, my guests are still here to do justice to the subject. Stay tuned. Welcome back from that short break, and this is still AAU Talks. Here on AAU TV, we are discussing the higher education space in Ethiopia, and I still have my two wonderful guests in the studios, and we are just doing justice to the subject. Before we left for the break, Leon just told us about the issues that exist in the higher education space in Ethiopia, and how is your institute going to address that particular challenge?
Okay. First of all, by virtue and in principle, when you establish a higher education institution, they have to serve the society.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's in principle, and we have to look at what's happening in practical ways.
Practical, yes.
Yeah. So our institute, one of the programs that we have, the strategic team that we have, was what we call it the Higher Education Learning Lab, which we abbreviate as HEL. Is the next, for instance, the next team is university social responsibility, because we also question that to really universities are responding the societal needs of its own citizens. So we need to have a debate on this so that we will create awareness among the higher education community. What do we mean by university social responsibility and how we can execute social responsibility? Does social responsibility mean only teaching, doing research and community service, or does it go beyond that? For instance, as you all know that there was a bit political turmoil in the country, and the universities were a bit silent, even those universities which have political science and international relations. And at least somebody would expect universities to speak out, at least to host some kind of debates among opposition parties or whoever is interested in addressing the societal problem or the political problem that Ethiopia has been facing. So we need, or we will host such kind of issues so that we can create awareness or serve as a platform for knowledge creation, experience sharing, so and so on. So in this way, we can contribute to the university or to the higher education sector so that they can execute their social responsibility based on knowledge and skill.
All right. So do we have a lot of the industries in Ethiopia also complaining that the graduates who kind of come out of our universities are not really responding to their demands in terms of skill, in terms of knowledge and expertise?
Yeah, I mean, maybe on the data, Abebaw can expound again. I think there is an issue of the relevance of the, and we have issues of graduate unemployment. I think that is an important thing. And I'll get to your question in 1 second. I just wanted to add, if I could, just to what Abebaw was saying, that another way that is very important as part of our mandate to assist the development of the higher education system is to provide policy advice. So we don't per se have to be like a purely research institute, although research has a fundamental role also in our mission, but we do want to be able to provide policy advice, and that is one of the things that we think we should do. And to do that, we want to build also networks, so networks with other universities, again for the issue of legitimacy. So I just wanted to add that to the higher education learning institute. Yeah. Great. And in terms of the graduate unemployment or graduate employability, we should say, there's certainly a problem in Ethiopia, as far as I could see, also in my recent work with Ethiopia, in terms of the relevance of what is being taught. That's also because of what I was mentioning before, the lack of diversification in the supply of program, in the offering. But what is also a bit disturbing is that there is a huge lack of studies to look at this. So we have very little data in Ethiopia, or very few studies that will look really at the graduate employability, like tracer studies. That is something that in the United States is very common. It's done on a regular basis, and in Ethiopia it's very rare. The last tracer study that I'm aware of, but maybe Dr. Abebaw can correct me with a more recent one, but that was like about 7 or 8 years ago. It was conducted by a university in Ethiopia. I think it was conducted by St. Mary's University, a private university in Addis. And that showed that over the 10 years prior to that, so we're talking the period 2007 till 2017 more or less, the graduate employability got worse. And that was a problem. But no study has been done after that, as far as I know. And that is a problem, because it's difficult to solve problems if we don't have the data. So that's also, again, something that I think our institute should be engaged in. Yeah.
Okay.
So you were saying that do the industries complain about the graduates? And my answer is yes. Do the employability of graduates is becoming more and more difficult and challenging? And I would say yes. And it has been also well recognized by the Ministry of Education. And I'm not sure how much you're familiar about the higher education management tool that have been introduced in Ethiopia for the last 15 years, I would say. And first, the business re-engineering process, BPR, the business process re-engineering have been introduced, and then we also introduced the balance scorecard, and then we introduced the Kaizen. Now we have introduced this deliverology. So when it comes to delivery, the higher education institutions have agreed to work on 7 strategies, and one of the strategies is enhancing the employability of graduates, university graduates. I'm not sure what kind of study it is. It's not as such. I don't have any reliable resource, but it shows that currently the employability of university graduates in Ethiopia is about 60–65%. But they are working to make sure that at least 85% of the graduates have to have a job in their own profession within a year of their
graduation.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can see that many of the industries have been complaining about the quality of the graduates. Not only the industry, by the way.
Everybody is complaining.
Yeah, we, the one who produces these graduates, are also complaining about the quality of our own graduates. So it's a multifaceted problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, looking at the growing demand for higher education in Ethiopia, do we have faculty members who are skilled, are well trained? For example, do we have the PhD holders still in Ethiopia? When you go to the institutions, do we still have such people who are teaching in our schools?
That is another huge issue in Ethiopia, and again the latest data show that, so there's 2 questions here at hand, I think. One is the qualification of the teachers, of the academics. And the number of PhDs is very low compared to other, at least to high-income countries. So we had done a benchmark study looking at different countries of different levels, and including Ethiopia, and that shows that that is a problem. So you have a lot of academic staff, who do not have a PhD, and it's quite often don't have a master's either. So that's one thing. The other issue is, I think, that Ethiopia, like most, I would say probably most sub-Saharan African countries, universities are still fundamentally based on teaching. And that's quite different from when you look at top universities from Europe or for the US.
Exactly.
And so the teaching activities is the predominant one, and for that you often don't have teachers who would have like a PhD. So it is again a bit of a situation where we have to solve one thing or the other, because you do need the teachers on the one hand, but on the other hand you also want them to be qualified, and that's a problem that in Ethiopia is quite clear. But there are strategies and also the strategies from the ministry.
So that makes your institute very relevant in such a period like this, because you are supposed to check the quality, we are able to support the academics in all the institutions and other jurisdictions as well.
I would agree with you, yes, absolutely. In that sense, yes, but I think a key area of our institute is specifically to develop the leadership and management capacity. And again, the leadership and management capacity, from that also other things will spill over, will happen if there's good leadership and management, including a reward system, or which is often lacking in our country. So I'm very integrated. I say our country, I mean Ethiopia. So including all these kind of systems to control and reward and not only punish, and all these kind of things would happen with good leadership and management.
Exactly.
So yeah.
I want to say a few words here. So when it comes to qualification, the government have its own plan. By, I think, if I'm not mistaken, by 2020, the governments want to see 30% of the whole academic population in universities have to have a PhD and 70% have to have masters, and 0 for those who hold this bachelor's. But yeah, that's a good and ambitious plan.
But do we still have people with bachelors teaching in the universities in Ethiopia?
I'm not sure, but it used to be. For instance, if you take myself, I used to teach while I was a graduate assistant because of lack of human resources in universities. And imagine that when you open 10 or 11 universities within a year, then where do you get the required human resources? Regardless of we also have some expats from India or somewhere else, but still that's not really sufficient. But I want to say this: it's not as such important. Qualification is very important, but the most important thing when it comes to quality of education is that it's not only having a PhD,
PhD.
or a certain academic
Yes, you're
rank.
right. Mhm.
What you can do with that? Did you really have some knowledge, skill that you gained when you go through this
Education system.
education system?
Mm.
If not, it's really good for your personal career development and so on. But how can we translate that into the ensuring of quality in the higher education system? If it doesn't contribute to the student learning, then your PhD, your master's, or your professorship has nothing. So I fear that this massification of qualifications, so and so on, which we are almost engaged in, may not as such contribute when it comes to quality of education. We need to take every care so that the educational qualification we get also speaks for itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think these issues are not peculiar to Ethiopia alone, because I have gotten the opportunity to speak to other academics from other countries and other universities, and it looks like it's almost hovering around the same thing. What are we supposed to do? What new thing will your institution bring on board to ensure that these things are no more, especially in Ethiopia, in the next, your vision is for the next 20 years, right?
2022.
2022. How will we ensure that all these problems that we have identified will be solved? If not totally solved, there is a roadmap to solving them. Let me take your view on that, Leo.
Yeah, I mean, I think again what I was mentioning just moments ago, one of the key things is the leadership development.
Yes.
And I think if you have good leadership, then you will have better functioning institutions.
Right.
And one of the key issues is, for example, that I was mentioning is in Ethiopia the lack of meritocracy. So there's a very clear, this came out of very clearly in a very participatory project we did, where we spoke with hundreds of stakeholders. And to implement a meritocratic system within the university, and so a system where you have accountability for what you do and all these kind of processes that for many of us maybe in Europe or in the US we give for granted to some extent. You need to have a leader that is able to implement that and to organize that. And you need to have a system within the university. So I think this is really an important thing that we want to introduce. But it's not only about the leaders themselves. The issue of meritocracy is also an issue, of course, of policy, because it's also about the issue of the election for certain positions. And so that's why I think that the different themes that Dr. Abebaw has mentioned before will help, especially in this sense, to become more effective, efficient as institutions, and also to bring about this change. I think that is really important. The thing that he was mentioning before, the learning labs, again, that is something where we want to learn from each other. Across the country. It's going to be rotating. We're going to do it in different universities so that it's not always AAU and AAU Addis Ababa University. And other institutions will not see it just as Addis Ababa University is something of that university. It's something that we want to decide together. Now, the next one will be on social responsibility, as was said, but the idea is that we will do this every 6 months, and we will discuss with the participants where to do next, what is a key theme that we should look at in order to develop our country's higher education.
Great. Let me take your view on that
so
also.
When it comes to leadership, I mean, I think it would be very interesting if we shared an idea of having a new directives on the selection and appointment of top-level leaders in Ethiopia. That means presidents and vice presidents. It used to be the case that many of these presidents and vice presidents, even sometimes deans, but usually the presidents and vice presidents, the main criteria was it was ethnicity or their political affiliation.
Wow.
And which was completely disappointing for many of the higher education community.
No matter their qualification?
Yeah, usually they have one, but it's not a problem nowadays having a qualification or a PhD. What matters is
you belong to a political party.
Usually you need to have some political affiliation, or if not, you should be from one of those ethnic groups where this university is geographically located.
All right.
Yes, but the government have found that it did some it's a mistake, and they want to rectify it. And now the directive have been approved last October or November.
Okay.
The new directives for the selection and appointment of higher education leaders and managers, which is completely meritocracy.
Okay.
So if we say that it's merit-based, then you need to have a very significant and promising leadership and management experience, and you could develop this by having such kind of training where our institute becomes at the forefront.
Okay.
You know, if you want to compete for this one,
You must go through.
yes, for instance, experience have 25 pointers when it comes to the leadership selection of president so and so on. So in order to get this kind of thing, you need to participate in these academic programs, or if you don't have the academic programs, you need to go through these professional trainings, which we have to customize by taking the Ethiopian context into consideration. So when you say it's meritocracy, it's not only having a PhD or some specialization.
But you have the requisite
exactly.
leadership
You are going
qualities
to lead a people, and you have to know how to lead people. You have to know how to manage the people. You know, Ethiopia is one of highly diversified country when it comes to ethnicity, religion, language. So it's not as such easy as we might thought about. Managing this community is really a very serious problem, which we are not still handling in the best possible, or in the way we think that scholars have been saying that diversity have to be managed like this.
Okay. So does that mean that your institute has been established to ensure that all academics in Ethiopia are being given some kind of leadership and management training? That is the purpose for the establishment, right?
Well, yeah, in one way, but we obviously do select certain levels of academics. So currently, for example, we started off with the deans.
Okay.
And then the idea or the design, let's say, of this training leadership development is to have that spill over at cluster level. So that was also what was being said earlier. So we will give certain trainings, but then you would have people who have been trained, let's say, by us, by the institute, who will be responsible to deliver that training also at cluster level and then within the institutions. And that is also an issue of making it feasible, but it's also an issue of legitimacy, that it's not all centralized by us in our only institution. And of course we will assist as needed and requested.
But you have a vision of maybe training 1,000 academics within the period that you have been set for, or?
I mean, we are planning to reach even at institution level, but it's not by bringing all people to our institute. So the plan is like this. The institute, the Ethiopian Institute for Higher Education, in the near future will be responsible only for the training of the top level leaders. That means the academic vice presidents and presidents. And then in Ethiopia we have 7 clusters based on the geographical location of the public higher education institutions. So at cluster level, those middle level managers will be trained, like deans and directors, and those lower level managers and leaders will be trained at institution level. This way we can reach all types of leadership and management level in
So you are looking at the apex.
Yes.
The deans and...
Yeah, but you can imagine that the interest is huge, so we have to focus only on the incumbent leaders who are already having this position. But in the future, we would also provide training for those who aspires in their time at some point to become a leader at some position.
But then do you play a supervisory role, or you do ensure that those who are at the cluster level are also doing the very things they're supposed to do in terms of quality and in terms of how rich the content are? Do you play that supervisory role as well?
I think we are going to have the training of trainers. That means those who have to train at cluster level, first they need to be trained in our institute. And then, you are right that we will oversee their activities, what kind of module they will develop, and if there is anything that they want, still we will be around to help them to enhance the quality of the training they will provide to their leaders.
We have a coordinating role as well for them.
So in terms of funding, how is it like for for the institute in terms of training the deans, the vice chancellors, or the presidents and directors? Is it fee paying, or there is a fund? You mentioned GIZ.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it take full payment for
So,
the people?
so in the long term, we obviously want to become financially sustainable and self-sustaining. We do have an agreement with GIZ on behalf of the German Ministry for Economic Development, which covers the current costs, at least for the first training. So we do have that project, and that is going to be, I think, 2 years still from now. So yeah, and so that is how it is now. In terms of financial sustainability in the future, the fee paying would be one of the options.
For now, it is not.
But for the moment, it's not. And one of the reasons also why we came here to visit AAU was to to learn from other experiences about issues of sustainability.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. And let me take your final words. What you want to share with the entire continent concerning your institute and also the higher education space in Ethiopia?
I have to say this. Africa has an immense human resource which we have not exploited very well. And many of the African higher education institutions have and even want to have collaboration with their northern counterpart. And it would have been good if like an association like Association of African Universities or others could take the responsibility to focus to have more South-South cooperation. And I know the problem is financial, otherwise every African country wants to work with the other African countries, but I haven't seen this happening. So I wish we could have more collaboration, and I hope that Association of African Universities will also help us in growing and supporting us in enhancing the establishment of the Ethiopian Institute of Higher Education, because we know that the Association of African Higher Education, the Association of African Universities have been working on this area. So we need their support.
All right, thank you. Leon?
Well, thank you. I second what was just said. Obviously, I just wanted to make one specific comment, which we have not talked so much in detail, is about gender equality. And one of the key things, I think, is to also empower women leadership. And again, Africa has got huge, as a subcontinent, we've got huge potential, and also in Ethiopia, but we still have very few women leaders. There's, as yet, in Ethiopia, there's no university president who is a woman, for example. So our institute looks very much at gender equality. That's one of also our core points in selecting and in working with other universities. So I just wanted to make this call to our institute and to Africa.
All right. Thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate the little time you've spent with us and sharing the resources that you have with the entire continent, and also explaining to us the very key issues in higher education in Ethiopia. We know we'll come back to you once more, and then we'll learn from you as well.
Thank you.
So
our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Great. So viewers, I have been speaking with two wonderful gentlemen from Ethiopia, and they are representing the Ethiopian Institute for Higher Education. I have Dr. Abebaw Adamu. He is the director of the Ethiopian Institute for Higher Education, and then also Leon Cremonini, and he is the managing director for the Ethiopian Institute of Higher Education. This has been AAU Talks, and my name is Kwesi Sam. Stay tuned. We'll meet you next time.